I do want to give a warning about this next story. Please be aware that it does talk about self-harm. My name is Ivy. I'm 5 years old, and I live with my mom. I always have lived with my mom, and I hope I always do. My mom doesn't have many friends. We've had guests over only a handful of times. Mom doesn't leave the house much either. I like it that way, though. I get almost all of Mom's attention, and when guests do come over, they give me lots of attention too. Mom takes great care of me. We play together a lot. She gives me new toys often. We cuddle every morning and night, and I never go to bed hungry. There's no mom better than my mom. I'd do anything for her. Recently, though, Mom seems sick. She naps more than she used to and cries a lot. She hasn't cleaned herself or the house in a while either. I've got all my shots, so I rarely get sick unless I eat something I'm not supposed to, or sit on the balcony too long in the cold. It's summer now, and Mom always knows what she's not supposed to eat. That must mean Mom's sick because she didn't get her shots. I'm sure she'll be better after some more napping and crying. That's what I do whenever I get sick. Last night, Mom didn't let me into her room for cuddles. I didn't hear any noise from her phone either. I tried calling out to her, but she didn't respond. I tried pushing myself against the door to open it, but that didn't work either. I'm too short to reach the doorknob, so I couldn't tell if the door was locked. Eventually, I just curled up and slept in front of her door. I hoped she'd open the door in the morning, but she never did. I tried everything I did last night all over again, but nothing worked. I cried for a long time too, but Mom ignored it. Does she hate me? I spent the entire day on my own. I ate all my meals alone. I played by myself and even napped alone. Again, I heard nothing from my mom's room. I'm too short to reach the blinds on my own, but I can tell another night is approaching because the bits of light that spill through the blinds are disappearing. Maybe tonight Mom will open her bedroom door. Last night was the same as the night before. I even tried scratching the door this time. To scare Mom into just noticing me. But it didn't work at all. I curled up in the front of the door again and cried until I fell asleep. When I woke up, I couldn't help but continue to cry. I yelled for Mom and begged her to come out, but I still got no response. I couldn't think of any other reason why Mom would do this except if I've been bad. When I'm bad, Mom takes a few of my toys away. I must have been really bad this time, so I brought all my toys to my mom's door to offer in exchange for her opening the door. But that didn't work either. Maybe she really does hate me. It's been about a week since I've seen or heard my mom, and I've eaten almost all the food I can find. The house has become messy due to my attempts to entertain myself without Mom. And there's a really, really bad smell coming from my mom's room that spread all over the house. I'm really scared. I've tried yelling to someone outside the front door, but I don't think anyone can hear me. I can't stop crying. I am so sorry, Mom. Please don't hate me anymore. I finally heard someone. I was yelling through the front door, and I think someone finally heard. They called my mom's name and tried to open the door, but it was locked. They seemed to ignore me, but sounded very interested in the terrible smell. They yelled to my mom that if she didn't call anyone by tomorrow, they'd have to come inside. My mom didn't give any response to the people outside. Maybe she hates them too. Today, Grandma and a big man came into the house. Grandma freaked out over the mess and the smell. She quickly scooped me up and brought me outside, while the big man called more people. Police came to the house and broke down my mom's bedroom door. They immediately started puking and saying bad words. Grandma tried to run inside, but the police held her back every time. Grandma started yelling and crying, which made me start crying. So Grandma put me in her car and gave me some water while she talked to the police. I heard some of the conversation, but I don't understand it. The police said my mom took her own life. I don't think it's possible to take something you already have. Maybe the police are stupid. They also said, based on my mom's diary, she locked herself in her bedroom so her cat wouldn't see her or possibly eat her and have to be put down. But I wanted to see Mom. I don't think I would have eaten her. I don't understand why Mom didn't want me to see her or why she thought I'd eat her. Am I really that bad? I saw different looking police bring Mom out in a big white bag and put her in a big truck with flashy lights. I cried and screamed for her. She still didn't notice me. Grandma grabbed all my things and told me I'd be living with her from now on. I love Grandma, but I want to live with Mom. Maybe the special police are taking Mom to get her shots so she'll be healthy again. Then I can cuddle her and tell her I'm sorry for being a bad cat. Hopefully she'll forgive me. I love you, Mom. Before I say anything, this is my first Reddit post. I don't really remember every detail of this event. Sorry if it goes from event to event really fast. So one day in 2020, I don't remember the specific month, my mother left the house for a day, so I was the only one there, and I was just sitting in my room when I heard a whisper of my name, and it was a very tiny, quiet whisper that was straight in my ear. After that, I started crying and got really creeped out. So I went to the bathroom to collect myself and to try not to overthink it and just to calm down overall. So I walked to the bathroom and I was already on edge, so I ran to the bathroom and then slammed the door behind me once I got in. Right when I looked in the mirror, I heard the whispers again, but this time it started out quiet, and every time I heard my name, the voice got deeper and deeper and deeper vocally, and deeper into my head like it was in my ears. After that happened, I was freaking out. I called my mother crying, and when I told her, she didn't act worried as if it was okay. I also have another thing that happened when I babysat my youngest brother, and this also happened in 2020, but I also have no idea when. While babysitting my little brother, he came into my room and told me he was hungry, so I went downstairs with him, and when we got to the kitchen, I stood behind him when he was in front of the fridge, but I felt breathing on my neck and felt my name. I don't know how to explain how I felt my name, but that's the only way I can explain it. I immediately started crying and told my brother to go upstairs and got a knife and went around the house checking every room. Sorry if this was kind of long, but it feels good to get it off my chest since the only person I have told didn't take me seriously. I have no idea if it was a ghost, spirit, or if I'm just crazy. Edit. So it's like 3 to 7 days after I first posted this story, and I was thinking about it again. And I remembered that I did the Ouija board with my stepdad and his friend down in the woods near our house. And I didn't remember when I first posted this because I always thought they were just playing a joke on me, or was just doing it to scare me since I was 10 or 11 when they let me play it with them. I just thought they didn't want me playing with them since they were grown adults. Anyways, when we did the Ouija board, we got into contact with Zozo. I'm sure some of you already know who that is, but if you don't, here's a little summary. He is an ancient demon who communicates with people via Ouija board. And if you say his name while you're playing the Ouija board, he apparently possesses you. Which is why I'm a little off-putted by this theory, because I have done some research and I haven't seen anyone that has had him attached to them. And I feel like I've only had minor stuff happen to me, and nothing big like other people's stories. I feel like it's something I just don't know what it is. I also have another story from 2018, when I was 9, that happened in my grandpa's house, and that's what really scares me, because I didn't play the Ouija for the first time until 2020. I mean, I did play a piece of paper one in 2017, and after that everything started happening. It's not like it worked or anything. At this point I think I'm just overthinking all of this, and maybe I just get scared easily. But if you want to hear the 2018 story, just comment, because I feel like that one was way scarier than the 2021. Hi, it's curiousraven. I want to tell you that you can make a Ouija board anywhere. It doesn't matter. So the one that you made out of paper could have easily opened up some type of thing for a bad spirit to come through. They're very dangerous. That's why I will not have a Ouija board in my house. They're dangerous, and they will haunt you, because you never know who you're actually talking to on the other side. I specifically did not say the demon's name more than once, because I am not bringing that negative energy around me. I hope you find some type of answers. I'm very sorry that you might have something attached to you. We go see a medium or someone that could possibly confirm it with you. Good luck. The experience when I was a child. It's hard to write the events that transpired from my mind into a post, so I'm doing the best I can, so sorry if it's badly written. When I was a child around 4 years old, I started having nightmares about an old man who would give me nightmares every night. I wasn't a child that needed attention all the time, since I was a silent child who didn't disturb anyone. One night I would cry for my mom and tell her the exact description of an old man that wanted me dead in my dreams. It turned out that I was describing the old owner of our house, who I had never met or seen. After a couple weeks of this, my parents got tired and asked for a babysitter while they went in town. This part was told to me by my mother, so it might not be exact. My mother went to some friends who informed her of our old house's owner had recently died, exactly a month ago, around the time I started having nightmares about an old man who I described perfectly as the owner of our house. My mom made some links in her head and realized I wasn't having nightmares, but was actually being haunted by the old owner. My mom, not knowing what to do, opened all the house's windows and told the ghost that this wasn't his house anymore and hasn't been for years. She told him to leave my family alone. After that, I never had another nightmare about him since recently. Since I have moved out of my house, I've been having these nightmares again. So could someone tell me how I could get rid of them? Curious Raven here. Have you ever tried to do sage in your house, like burning some sage? Have you tried what your mother did? Open all the windows of your new place and stand firm and tell him that he has died and that he needs to leave you alone and he needs to leave. That in the name of God, he needs to leave. That he is not welcome in your house. That's the only real advice I can give you. I'm sorry. So this is a wild story. My neighbor was a woman who drank a lot, did a lot of drugs, and had a lot of money. Let's just call her Jane for this story. I wasn't too close with her, but sometimes she'd want company, and I'd get high with her, or she wanted company going to the store and would buy me whatever. One day, she comes to my door after recently being discharged from the psych hospital. Jane was already high and drunk and basically tells me we're going out and we're gonna party, etc. And I agree. Long story short, after going to the bar and drinking, she wanted some cocaine and kept talking about it. I, at the time, was an addict, mostly abstaining from street drug use, but was taking methadone and was familiar with the drug spots. And since she was just going to spend hundreds and give me a bunch of money for myself, I told her that while I can't get coke, I can get crack. She was okay with that. So we went to the west side of Chicago. On the way, her BMW security system activated because earlier she left keys in car and climbed through the sunroof to unlock the car and retrieve the keys. Out of nowhere, the wheel locked, and we had this whole ordeal. The panic of that incident transformed Jane into a fun-loving drunk to a violent, belligerent one. She went from being sweet to being like an exorcist, and this transformation occurred as we were in the hood, a mile from the open-air drug market. Somehow I managed to make the deal go down without her creating a scene or drawing attention from police, etc. I picked up like $100 in crack and $100 in heroin. We got in the car and she started speeding and talking about suicide. I was so freaked out because I couldn't persuade her out of the insanity. So I pulled out the drugs so I can at least calm my nerves with opiates before the inevitable crash or arrest. Jane demanded to use when she saw me pull out the bag. I tried to explain to her that we had no crack pipe and we couldn't use it yet. None of that goes through to her, and she ripped the bag out of my hand. Unknowingly, she grabbed a bag of heroin, ripped the stop with her teeth, and snorted it. Shortly afterward, we finally crashed when she failed to stop at a light and rear-ended a young man in the heart of the ghetto. The crash snapped her out of her insanity, and she rushed over and gave the man $50 and some weed. His car wasn't damaged, and he understood by our dialogue we had drugs on us and needed to dip, so he accepted what she gave him, and he even helped calm her down and bring her to the car. After that, I was allowed to drive, and I could see the drugs were taking effect, and she was falling into a blissful but conscious state. When we arrived back home, I walked her home and left all the drugs knowing she had too much. At this point, she was still conscious, and as far as I knew, she had none of the hard drugs we just picked up, but did have alcohol and the Xanax she prescribed. After that night, I hadn't seen her for about a week and was nervous something happened to her. I googled her name and found out she died that night. It hit me so hard, and after that I started regularly using again. One day I was smoking outside weeks after all this happened, and 2 police detectives arrived at my place. They were there together because they got access to the ATM camera where we withdrew money from her card. I told them pretty much everything, but left out the part where she grabbed the heroin from me and snorted whatever she was able to stuff up her nose while she was driving frantically, speeding down the road, raging on about suicide. The detectives left and told me they'd get back in touch after they got toxicology report and do a further investigation. A few days after that, I was smoking a Black & Mild cigar and filming myself blowing O's. At the time I recorded myself, I was completely alone on the patio, and it was totally silent. I didn't immediately rewatch the video because when I did, I noticed the sound of a woman's voice whispering closely to the mic saying, "Hurry up, say it." It took no time at all for me to realize whose voice that was and what she wanted. She wasn't a heroin user and only used accidentally while drunk and raging. When detectives returned a few weeks later, I made a point of telling them. They recorded a video of me telling all that happened for her family. The overdose and heroin use was an open question and confusing them, so it all fit with my intuition and the words captured on video. I lived in an apartment complex and she lived above me. Since then, things fall over all the time. Lights turn on by themselves. The weirdest incident was I walked in the bathroom and the shower curtain was rapidly shaking, and I ran out thinking a rat was in the bathtub, but nothing was there. Sounds of footsteps are ever present late at night. I warned friends about it when they stayed the night, and every time, every friend that stays will say they hear strange noises and footsteps. I put the ghost voice video on YouTube, which I have linked. Listen closely and you'll hear a woman whisper, "Hurry up and say it." I will go ahead and play that video here. Hi everyone, it's Curious Raven again. Yeah, this gave me chill bumps. I'm very happy that you helped her and you cleared up a lot of things that happened with her family, because they would have been in agony for life, not knowing what really happened to their family member. So I'm happy you did the right thing, and I hope you're doing better yourself as well. Last night I was having trouble getting to sleep. Around 2 a.m., I sensed someone outside my bedroom door. I turned my head to look and saw a tall, shadowy figure standing in the shadows of the darkness. The figure then spoke to me, very clearly, in the voice of my next-door neighbor, and asked, "Do you have any tobacco?" I was half asleep and confused, and angrily so rudely replied, "No, I effing don't," and the figure silently moved away. A second later, I hear the front wooded door open and close, but no screen door, or my neighbor's doors. We live in a semi-detached unit, so our doors are very close, 8 meters. And as we are very good friends, he often pet and house sits for me, but he has never just let himself in when I'm home. I lay in the bed angry for a bit. Then as I fully awakened, I realized my front door was locked and deadbolted, and the screen door also locked. My neighbor did not have my keys. He had given them back after borrowing my car earlier in the evening. Goosebumps crawling all over, I go to check my doors. Locked safely as they had been when I went to bed. Yet I have one footprint that looks like someone turning on the spot. I didn't think you could move or talk during sleep paralysis. I have experienced other paranormal activity, yet this was such a non-threatening but still alarming experience. Very different to anything I've seen so far. Please convince me I'm not going silly. Raven here, you're not going silly, because I really do believe that a ghost popped in to say, "Hey, do you have any tobacco?" And it might have been a Native American ghost, because that's something that they cherished and used a lot back in the day. They say that if you put tobacco out and offer it to the spirit, they usually will make peace with you. So maybe you can try that, especially since they asked for it. I hope this helps. One time, I saw this person in my doorway staring at me. I never really told anyone about this, but it's always something I remember because how she smiled at me. It made me feel less scared. It was almost as if she was trying to tell me my mom was fine, and she just couldn't hear me. It's also something I learned from a young age that not all ghosts are scary or out to harm you, and I've always appreciated that thought. Raven here. Sorry this does not have a lot of details to it. It is still really creepy that she saw a ghost in her doorway, and the ghost was there to let her know her mom was okay. So I'm guessing that maybe her mom passed away. I hope you are doing fine. Here is one of my fave ghostly experiences. I rarely tell because it actually happened on Halloween night, and I'm like, no one will believe me. I was staying in former dormitory across from the offices that were occupied during the day. I absolutely adored the historic building, 1920s, and a lot unchanged in the room. I was alone except for the janitor every night, who came at about 10 p.m. and was gone by midnight. I had a double room with a shared common area in the middle and an empty bedroom on the other side of the common area. I closed my bedroom door and proceeded to read a really spooky book to be in the Halloween mood. It was about 2 a.m. when I started to hear what sounded exactly like someone at a desk writing on the other side of the wall. I mean, what I experienced was like chair moving and shuffling of papers around that literally were not there. And the actual space that the sound was coming from, there was no desk. Just a little counter with an old TV and adjacent coffee station. I was literally glued to my mattress as this went on for what seemed like forever, but was probably about 20 minutes. I stayed wide awake for at least another hour and a half, but finally had to go to the bathroom and had to open the door to the common area and go down the hall. I prepared myself to actually see a person, even though I really felt like it was a ghost. But it was Halloween, and I was like, I am probably being so ridiculous, scaring myself. And who knows? It's like a loud mouse or something. Still, no rationalization really made any sense. I never experienced anything again in that room except for a feeling sometimes, especially when I first come into the room. It was always like somebody else had just walked out. Curious Raven here. I don't know, maybe it's a student that wants to be left alone, a ghost student, or a ghost office worker, and when they sense someone's coming in, they just leave until you leave. That's the only thing I can think of. That's really creepy though. Hello everyone, my name is Enora, and at the moment I am 11 years old, but this story started since I moved into a really creepy house, since I was 4 years old. I am a girl, passionate about paranormal, and spend my life on the horror thread, Squeezy, Noah, etc. In short, my house has an attic in which I sleep with my sister, and a cellar. Except that this house is very old, and there is a lot of noise. But you see, when you are alone at home and you hear footsteps in the living room, this is not reassuring. At one point, I came home from college, so I opened my door and had a bad feeling. I was dead of fear. But like every Friday, I have a friend who comes, and we work. My friend, who we will call Max, comes to my house and we start working. Max, he is used to coming to my house and he knows my house very well. And there he tells me there is something which is not normal. At this moment we are stressed, as I do not know what. We hear the noise of not coming from my room. We break from home without a shoe, without a coat, just portable and a key from my house. But with Max we have a talk, is that we must automatically turn off all the lights. So we enter the house, we take all of our things, and there we break. I specify that I close the door. And I heard a little laugh, and since then I have never had bad feelings again. I don't know if there was really anyone inside my house, and I'm never talking to my mother about it. I would also like information because yesterday I and my friends found a key, type old model with paper stuck on it, and the message gives, a golden key opens all the doors. At the claws of the lion. If you have any ideas what this means, please tell me. Thank you. Hello, Enora. You have such a beautiful name, by the way. Yeah, that is creepy. Figuring out that we walk into your house and it just doesn't feel right. And then as you leave, you hear something laughing. That's really creepy. With the key thing, I have no idea. And that's some crazy mystery. I hope you can find something out. Let me start out by saying I'm 22. I live alone out in the country. I live in an old farmhouse with a good 40 acres surrounding me, but most of it woods. It used to be a plantation in the early years, after slavery became a thing. It was sold to me at an auction after the previous tenant moved out, with no explanation, and left all of his stuff behind. There's a barn still standing. That's where I keep my horses when they're not out in the fields during the day. Anyways, the house is nice. There's not much wrong with it, other than the occasional unknown noises and crashes throughout the night. I walked into this because it was a great deal, and I was fresh out of college with nowhere to go. My first day here, I was out riding my favorite horse, Texas. We were about to go under a tree when he got spooked and bucked me off, taking off into the woods. I didn't know what spooked him until I happened to look up and noticed a noose hanging from one of the limbs. I immediately took it down and threw it out. I've been here for 3 months now, and he still refuses to go near that tree. It had been a few weeks since that incident, and I was riding him along the fence line when off in the distance by the pond, I noticed an African woman, but only she was wearing a long dress and holding a basket. I called out to her and she turned and she just vanished into nothingness. We continued our ride every now and then, and again you'd hear the screams or cries of pain from those who worked in the long-forgotten, overgrown fields. Those poor souls are trapped here, and I'm now the owner of this gruesome place. After my first month of living here, I'd grown to get used to the screaming and crying. I'd grown to get used to the ghostly apparitions and the glimpse of what the noose was used for. I went to bed one night after a long day of work. I was exhausted and I just wanted to sleep. I tossed and turned all night, but the screams kept waking me up. It was only when the tall figure walked into my room did I understand why the previous tenant left. The figure came closer and closer to me. I was frozen with fear. The smell of smoke and burnt flesh filled my nostrils as I laid still. I reached out, grabbing my throat, burning my skin and choking me until I fell unconscious. I woke up the next morning to no burn marks, no sign of a break-in or nothing. It was just a bad dream, I told myself, getting ready the next morning. I was washing my face when it happened. The water grew boiling hot from the cold I had set it on. I reached my hand under, only for it to burn me. I wrote it off as me being forgetful, and I just ignored it. The days went on with nothing new happening. It had been a few days since I'd seen the figure in my room. I decided to do some research. I sat in front of the computer in the kitchen trying to find anything I could. I sat for hours and found nothing. I felt hopeless, so I took a break and went to ride around the property searching for anything I could. Just past the trees deeper in the woods, there is a small clearing that I seem to have missed. I left Texas in the field since something seemed to spook him and make him not want to go. I walked a few feet into the woods, and that's when I smelt it. The burnt flesh from a few nights ago. It didn't register at first until I saw, hidden away in the weeds, was a small shack. I cleared some of the weeds away to try and find the door or anything so I could get inside. After all, it's on my property. I found the door rusted shut, so I kicked it in to find nothing but an empty shack and a small hatch that smelled like burnt flesh, seemingly distant. I get curious of the hatch when I noticed it was locked. I tried opening it or finding another way to gain access. I searched and searched as the screaming began growing louder and louder as the smells of burnt flesh filled the room, with smoke following suit. I ran as fast as I could. I didn't see the hole until it was too late. My foot smashed through the old rotted boards as I fell into the opening. My eyes found a ladder on the walls as I realized I was in a passageway. But where? Where was I? I turned and looked off down the passage, walking down as it led to a bigger room with even more divided passages. Why, I wondered. I took note of the smell of burnt wood and flesh. Growing worried, I noticed off in the corner of the room was a pile of bodies, burnt, decaying bodies, where a ladder once existed, dangling from the roof from a passage above its now charred remains, stood lonely in the room. I turned to go find my way out, wondering if the opening is where the hatch is located. I didn't get much time to think as a passage filled with screams of pain and terror, the passage seemingly growing hotter as smoke filled the room. I found the ladder quickly, climbing up as fast as I could manage. I ran off away from the hole, away from the shack towards the pond, as I saw the woman standing there again. She stopped me and just pointed towards the tree. "What is it? What happened here?" I asked. "They hung my son. He was caught trying to escape, so they hung him, made all of us watch. When they found the passage, they threw in torches and gas to stop more of us from leaving. The poor souls who were still down there burned alive. Their screams filled the night." She answered as she started to walk off, vanishing into thin air. I stood shocked at what she told me, shocked a ghost would talk to me and give me information that I desperately wanted to know. I walked back into the house, silently, just wanting to relax. In the bath that I didn't notice all of the broken glass in the kitchen, and I didn't notice a figure standing in the doorway as I passed. I crept up the stairs to the bathroom, turning on the water. Blood rushed from the faucets as I turned them on. I panicked and blinked only for it to be normal water. I sighed down as I climbed into the water, trying my best to relax. I guess I must have fallen asleep as I woke up. My lungs were filling with water, and the figure standing over me, hand around my throat. I fought back, and I fought back hard. The figure fell back as I climbed out, leaning over the edge, coughing up water, moaning and groaning as the figure watched. I guessed it noticed my struggle, realizing I wasn't who it thought I was. I caught my breath, screaming at the charred body, my throat burning from the water. "Who are you, and what do you want from me?" I screamed as loudly and as best as I could. The figure noticed my pain, its human form slowly taking over again. I watched intensely as he walked towards me, the plantation owner. He treated us poorly. I've sought out after my revenge for what he did to us, the spirit said calmly. He slowly disappeared from my sight. That was within the first month of living there. Last month wasn't so bad, hardly any activity. I've yet to see the figure again, and I hope I don't. These screams still keep me up at night, but here lately, they've been getting louder and closer, and last night, they were outside my bedroom, banging on the door. To preface this, I love to drive, like long hour drives to nowhere with no destination in mind. Just me, my music, and the road ahead of me. Living in Nebraska, I'd often take back roads or lonely highways cutting through the countryside to small towns and eventually cities. And I'd usually take these drives at night since there was less traffic to worry about. I've done it since I've had my license 4 to 5 years ago, and I've never once had any sort of issue, nor have I ever ran into any trouble. That was until a few nights ago. For reference, I am a small 22-year-old female, and as I've stated before, I often take these drives completely and utterly alone. They are a good way to clear my head when I am stressed, upset, or overwhelmed, or for me to get a better plan together to sort personal issues out. I have also done these long and lonely drives to get away from toxicity of my household when I used to live with my parents as a means of coping with their alcoholism. Through now that I've moved out, I'm in a much better place mentally. I don't really have an urge to get in my car and drive anymore. However, on the night this event took place, I was feeling pretty overwhelmed, stressed, and anxious with a clusterfuck of personal issues I'd rather not get into. I felt restless and irritable around my boyfriend, couldn't focus on anything else, and decided I would take a drive to clear my mind. My boyfriend was understanding and told me to be careful and to not be gone too terribly long, since it was getting pretty late. I agreed, gave him a kiss goodbye, and left. I drove around our city for about 30 minutes, but I was still feeling on edge about everything transpiring in my personal life. So I decided to drive further north down those familiar, dark, winding, one-lane highways. I kept the car at a steady 65 miles per hour, taking the turns at a slower pace in case a deer jumped out around the bend, and was just admiring the vast, empty darkness of the snow-capped fields and barren trees. It was honestly a bit creepy, being all alone with no cars in sight, in seemingly the middle of nowhere, the few hours miles back from the road, lightless, and the dead cornfields weathered away and covered in the snow. It was like something out of a horror movie, and I half expected to see a ghost pop up in my rearview mirror, or see someone clamber out from the patches of trees dotting the horizon. The only light came from my headlights, and even then I still strained to see through the inky darkness of night. By now it was just after 11, and I told myself that once I made the familiar roundabout that would either take you to a small town or back up towards the city, I would head back to the city and home. The roundabout was still maybe 15 to 25 minutes away, but other than my imagination picturing the worst, I wasn't really all that concerned. I mean, I was by myself. I didn't have any other motorists to worry about, right? Wrong. As I'm rounding another bend, I notice a vehicle with its hazards flashing maybe a quarter a mile or something away from me. It was some sort of sedan, dark colored, and was angled to where only part of it was on the shoulder, where the rest was jutted out onto the road. Like they had to pull over in a hurry, but didn't quite manage to do that. The driver's side door was flung wide open, and as I slowed my vehicle down and angled it towards the opposite side of the road to pass, I could make out what looked like maybe blood on the inside of the open door. I didn't see anyone on the road in the car, and was the only motorist in sight. Cell reception was spotty, but more often than not, you couldn't get reception no matter how hard you prayed, which was definitely the case when I took a glance at my phone to see if I had any service. So a lone female on the road at night, pulling up near a vacant vehicle that looks like someone had been attacked on the inside with no cell service. Now, I'm no dummy. I've watched countless episodes of Investigation Discovery and Criminal Minds, and read far too many true crime books to know this had bad and danger written all over it. But there was still a small part of me that worried something terrible had happened to whoever was in that vehicle, and I thought I needed to help. These roads don't get a lot of traffic late at night, and temperatures were well below freezing. If someone was hurt or in trouble, there was no one and nothing else to help them but me. Still, I erred on the side of caution. I was still driving my car through a bit more slowly, and as I approached the vehicle, I rolled down my passenger window a bit, shut off the music, and called out, "Hey, anyone there? Are you okay?" I didn't hear a response. I worried they were passed out somewhere, but I wasn't able to get out and look for them. I told myself I'd call out one last time, and if I didn't hear anything, I would leave, and the moment there was reception, I'd call it in. And if I did hear someone, well, I'd figured out my next course of action then. So again I shout, "Hey, what happened? Are you okay?" There was still silence for a beat, and then I heard rustling in the shadows of the trees, followed by a gruff voice saying, "Yeah." I was relieved at first, and was about to say something in response, or possibly even stop my car and get out, when I noticed three things nearly simultaneously. As I inched my way past the front of the sedan, I noticed there was no damage to the hood or anywhere else on the vehicle, which I found to be strange considering the blood on the inside of the door. In my rearview mirror, I caught a glance of someone coming out from behind the sedan, and they were making their way towards my car fast. The person did not have any blood on them or appeared injured in any way, wearing a mask, not like a face mask for COVID or a ski mask or anything normal, but one of those masks you would see in the Purge movies. And they were holding something in their hand. I don't know what it was. I couldn't get a good look, but from its length and shape, my guess was maybe a tire iron or a crowbar or something. I don't need to tell you that I slammed on the gas the moment I noticed those things and drove like a bat straight out of hell, my heart thundering in my chest and my entire body shaking. My window was still rolled down in my haste and my music was still shut off. I could very clearly hear someone, definitely a man, shouting at me, though I had no clue what they were saying. I just knew I had to get out of there immediately. I stole one last look in the rearview mirror as I drove away, mostly to see if they were getting in their sedan to follow chase or if they had stopped. The man with the weapon was still standing in the middle of the road watching me, and right before I looked away from the mirror, I saw a second man emerge from the trees that had been wrestling earlier, also wearing one of those creepy masks and no trace of blood on him. I probably broke every law for speeding that night, but I wanted to get away from those men as possible. As soon as I made it to the roundabout, I turned towards town, parked in the Walmart parking lot that thankfully still had cars, from who I assumed were workers closing up shop. I proceeded to have a full-on meltdown. When I could pull myself together, I called one of my friends, T. He was a police officer, to tell him what happened and what I should do. He was concerned for me, and after asking if I was okay, where I was, did they follow me, etc., he told me since it was out of city limits, he couldn't do much on his end, but he could get in contact with the local police sheriff in the jurisdiction to take my statement and check it out. I agreed, thanked him, and while I waited for the police to show up, I called my boyfriend. Through my hysterical sobs and panic, I managed to tell him what happened, not even 10 minutes or so ago. He was, as you could imagine, super freaked for my safety and wanted me to either come home immediately or drive down himself to take me home. I told him the police were on their way to take my statement, so I couldn't leave and that I was okay. But I stayed on the phone with him until I saw the familiar police cruisers pulling into the lot. I gave the police my statement, and they assured me they would go back to the spot. I told them the sedan had been a take-a-look. The sedan had been to take a look, and that they would try to catch the guys who did it. Though with no cameras and no description of them, I wasn't sure they'd be able to. I didn't even get a license plate number, though at that time of my panic, the thought never came to my mind until the police were asking if I got it. All they had to go off of was a dark-colored sedan and 2 guys with masks. After I gave my statement, I went home and stayed curled up close to my boyfriend the whole night, listening to every sound the house made in fear it would be those guys arriving any minute to finish whatever it was they started. Since the incident, I haven't heard back from the police about whether or not they have any leads, and I'm not sure they ever will. I'm just thankful I'm still here and that I didn't stop my car or got out. I'm not sure what would have become of me if I did. I still have so many questions that have no answers. What were they doing? Why? Was that blood on the inside of the car? Or just a ruse to get some attention? If it was really blood, did they hurt someone else? What would have happened to me if I had stopped my car? Needless to say, I won't be going on any more late night drives to anywhere, and I hope I never cross paths with those freaks again. Hey guys, we're here with our friend Daniel, and today we're going to be catching ourselves some porch pirates. Allie finally looked up from her phone and saw me watching her. She burst into laughter while trying to wave me away. Stop it, I'm just practicing. Didn't realize you took it so seriously, I said. Oh, I'm a very serious person, she answered with a smile. Everything I do is serious. Dead serious. Is that why he's wearing a Halloween mask? The skull beside me snapped up from the camera feed. His name was Justin, and he spent the evening at mine, rigging up all sorts of hidden cameras. When I'd asked my friend to do a favor, humiliating some local thieves, I didn't expect her to turn up with a camera guy. Don't mock the skull dude, he said. It's because he doesn't want his face on the video, Allie pointed out. Doesn't toe the company line. Just because everyone else wants to end up on camera doesn't mean I have to. You're much better off screen, I joked. Allie laughed and the skull guy scoffed at me before returning to the camera feed. He was clearly excited for the big moment. Can't wait to get these fuckers, he said. My parents are always having stuff stolen off their doorstep. What time do they usually come? Allie asked me. Well, definitely before I get home from work at midnight. I'd guess they'd probably wait after it gets dark. We could see the sun starting to set through my kitchen window, and Allie replied, That makes sense. I guess now it's when we need to start being quiet. She made a good point, and the two of us fell silent. Justin barely changed from where he'd sat with his back to the wall, but Allie and I moved over to join him, so we were just out of sight of the porch and drive. Now and again we'd whisper a few hushed words. She thanked me for letting her do this, saying it was a great idea for a video and hopefully I'd get her noticed by her boss. But for the most part, we were silent and still. I always thought stakeouts looked fun on TV, but this was mind-numbingly boring. The only thing even slightly interesting was the storm kicked up, and sometimes I'd catch Allie counting Mississippis after each flash of lightning. It was cute by the time 10:30 rolled around. I wondered if I would have been better off just working up the courage to ask her out on a date. "Ah, shit," Justin grumbled, pulling off his mask with a frustrated yank. "Fucking camera cut out." "What?" Allie cried. "No, is it serious?" "Probably the douchebag Craig not charging the batteries," and Justin pushed himself with a look of discomfort. He grumbled the entire way to the door. "Jesus Christ, this shit is why one day I'm going to take the boom mic of his and shove it right." The door closed behind him. Allie was doing her best not to laugh. "Oh my God," she mouthed slightly. "I think I forgot." We both sat there giggling hysterically at this, although I'm not sure why I was laughing all that hard at her joke. I just liked the company. After a while, she slumped back beside me, and I fell quiet. She let out a contented sigh, and her head fell into my shoulder. Her breathing changed. It became gentle, rhythmic, different. I knew she was asleep, and I think I stayed there for a long time. I didn't dare move a muscle. Instead, I closed my eyes, remained awake but disinterested in the world. There was only the warmth of her head and the soft touch of her hair. I was starting to feel pretty sure that she liked me as well. It was the only reason I'd accepted her offer to film at my house. I never really understood her job, something to do with social media, but I was glad this night had happened. The only issue was that it'd be ruined with Justin when Justin returned. "Where's Justin?" I said, not intending to speak question aloud, but the thought had taken me by surprise. Allie stirred a little, but she didn't wake. I wasn't sure if this was normal. All that I knew was that it felt wrong, and that feeling of wrongness got worse with every second that passed. "Allie," I whispered, after a while gently nudging her with my shoulder. She lifted her head with a long tired groan. Shit, she said, still wiping a trickle of drool away. "Did I sleep on you? Oh God, I'm sorry." "Don't worry," I said. "Why's Justin taking so long?" Allie frowned and sat upright before taking her phone out to check the time. "He shouldn't be taking this long," she said. The wind blew so hard, a far-off window rattled. For a moment, it felt like the whole house was shaking, and both Allie and I laughed nervously as the storm before turning around to check the front window. I quickly joined her and looked, but there was just my porch, the wooden deck brightly lit. Justin had turned the light on, but there was no sign of him. Behind the empty porch, the dark loomed larger, like my house had been picked up and dropped on a cliff overlooking a stormy sea. I couldn't quite shake the feeling that there was something out there staring at me, and without knowing why, I ducked down out of sight. I faced the kitchen, my kitchen, but it looked different somehow. I didn't know if it was just a fear or what, but it reminded me more of a tomb than a home. I felt like I was an intruder, and the more I told myself it was my home, my safe place, the more something in my mind rebelled against that idea. The hallway leading to my living room looked cold and sterile, the stairs unnaturally large. "It's so quiet," Allie whispered. "Wait, didn't he set some kind of trap?" I asked. "Something like a piece of string on an air horn?" "Oh shit, yeah," said Allie. "We would have heard anyone coming up the driveway." Justin's probably just gone back to the car to look for equipment," I said. "For all we know, the storm's broken something, and the sight of Justin scared off the thieves before they got anywhere near the tripwire." Allie looked relieved and started to laugh. She placed one hand on her chest as if to calm herself. She'd painted her nails an aquatic teal, and the color made me think of swimming pools in the summer. "We're like kids hiding under the covers," she cried. "Well," I paused, wondering if this was a good time. "You make me feel like I'm just a kid again. It's nice." For just a second she smiled and looked at me with an unreadable expression. She was getting ready to speak when something flew into the window with a terrible thump. Whatever was on her mind was lost in the sudden fright, and she screamed so loud it left a ringing in my ears. She fell to, "Oh my God," she cried. "I'm so sorry. I just didn't expect that." "It's just a storm," I said, turning to face the window, throwing all sorts of... I didn't finish my sentence. The glass had been painted in an explosion red. At first I thought it had been a bird. When I was a kid, I'd once woken up and watched a crow fly so hard into our window it made a big, bright red smear. My old man was too busy to ever bother cleaning it. He left it to the rain. So for the days I slept with this winged outline of dried gore smeared over the window. I always remembered the feathers, but this time there was only blood. Is that what I think it is? She was gripping the window frame so hard her fingers turned white. I pulled myself up. Lying on the porch was a hand with the cuff of a man's shirt still attached. "Justin," I mumbled. "We need to call the police," Allie cried, tears running down her face. She was shaking as she dialed the emergency number and waited with held breath while it rang and rang and rang and rang. "They're not answering," she yelled. "They have to answer," I said, my voice verging on a yell. "Well, you fucking try," she snapped. "It won't stop ringing." Quietly, I swallowed my nerves and waited while the phone continued to ring. After what felt like an eternity, Allie gave up and threw her phone in rage. "Fuck this," she cried. This is just some kind of joke. Some fucked up person is messing with us, probably Justin." She was up and moving before I had time to think. In seconds, she was through the door and standing outside, arms hugging her chest while her hair flickered in the wind. "We should go back in," I said, gently pulling at her elbow. "I think I can hear him," she said. "Listen." I stopped dead, but all I could hear was the wind. "Justin!" she cried suddenly, snatching her arm away before running into the dark. I followed, fumbling to use my smartphone as a light, but by the time I turned it on, my feet hit the gravel of my driveway. Allie had already disappeared from sight. It was like the night had swallowed her whole. "Help!" The words were mewed, not shouted. I turned to look at the source, but all I could see was a colorless disc of my torch lighting up stones and grass. It felt like the sky itself had fallen down and was smothering the light. "Help! Allie!" I screamed, but the wind ate my words. "Justin! Allie, help!" I turned back to my house. The door was swinging widely from where it had been left open. The only light was the one in the kitchen. It was so bright against the night, it looked like a portal into another world. We'd been so visible standing there. Even from where I stood, I could clearly see Allie's hand gripping the windowsill, as plain as... "Allie!" I screamed, suddenly realizing what I was looking at. Somehow she must have run back in without me noticing. I'd heard the door banging, but I hadn't even thought of it. The relief I felt reached right from my chest all the way down to my toes, and I ran towards the door, crying out her name. "Oh my God!" I cried, bursting through the door with a shiver and a laugh. "Holy shit! I lost you. It was so She wasn't there. Nothing was. There was no hand. There was only her phone lying on the floor. Where'd she thrown it? I couldn't figure this out, any of it. I was so confused, I ran back into the dark and began to scream. "Allie!" Over and over. "Help!" God, the voice sounded so close that time. I stepped out onto the porch in the hope I'd hear it better. "Help!" Slowly, I looked down at my feet. Something moved between the wooden slats. I ran off the porch immediately, threw myself down onto the grass. I shone my light into the dark and saw Allie staring back at me from under the house, her eyes wide and her face pale. "Allie!" I said. "Allie, come on!" I dragged myself into the darkness and kept calling, but she didn't make a sound. All around me were dozens and dozens of cardboard boxes, smashed and pulped into a barely recognizable shape. Something wet squelched beneath me as I got further in, and I realized it was the cardboard that had been shredded and soaked in something thick and vicious. The stench down there was unbearable, but I didn't give it a moment's thought. Allie needed my help, and I crawled onward into that filth until at last her porcelain face was looking back at mine, framed by darkness and small amounts of trash. "Allie!" I cried, reaching my hand behind her head to pull her closer. If I could just grab a wrist or a shoulder, I knew I had the strength to drag her out and get her back inside. But it all went wrong. I pulled and found almost no resistance. I watched the mounting horror as she leaned face first into the dirt, and somehow her head just kept going. By the time my brain pieced together the anatomical truth, her severed head had rolled to my position. I was left staring at the brutalized stump of her neck. For a brief moment, the world narrowed into a tunnel of white static. I was so afraid I could feel my balls shrivel up, while the warmth of my own piss pulling beneath me. I had to get out. I looked around, and for the first time, the actual meaning of what I was seeing got through to me. Here were my packages. They'd never been stolen away. They were here the whole time, all of it, twisted and soaked and warped into a nest? I whispered. Something moved. I shone my light around me and saw a box topple, seemingly by itself. A whole nervous system felt like it had turned into air raid siren. A thought burned itself into my head, dropped into the stew of panic thoughts like ice in a glass. You are not alone down here. I flashed my light left to right and caught something, a fleeting glimpse of motion. But when I swung my light back, everything was still. I squinted hard, trying to pierce the darkness. There was something amidst all that trash, something small and black and glassy. Two somethings, actually, buried amongst a confusing mess of soggy folds and corrugated pulp. It exploded towards me in a frenetic alien crawl. Those glistening black shapes had been eyes in the face made of confusing parts that moved and clicked with aggressive hunger. Something quivered in the light, in some kind of shell, perhaps? I couldn't say. It moved so strangely, I still don't know what its outline looked like. But what little I'd seen was enough, and I started to frantically crawl backwards, and I was so scared I made a mess of everything in my desperate scramble. Boxes fell over, my fist burst through random mounds of filth, but found no purchase. In the rain, slick mud beneath me started to churn. I think I was screaming something in fear. Like I said, I don't really know. I do remember that my skin started to burn, and I remember looking down and seeing my hands, knees disappear into quagmire of blood-spotted bile. I also remember the feeling of something covered in thick bristles stabbing into my ankles, right through the space between tendon and the muscle. I was saved only because the low ceiling stopped, and the thing from the ceiling on top of me, the thing from climbing on top of me. At one point it bucked wild in a kind of rage, and I swear the house above was rattling and shook. Whatever it was huge, and it didn't have any easy time getting to me. The few times I looked back, it looked like a tree root had grown my flesh, or maybe a spider's leg. I remember wondering what it wanted when it yanked my leg to the side, and something wet started to tighten around my foot. It was unbearably strong. A bone gave way in a series of power convulsions. By the time I realized it was biting me, it closed whatever it had for a mouth around my knee joint and tore the leg apart. After that, I was free to finally escape, although the threat of blood loss loomed large. I know at the point I fell unconscious on the lawn, because the next thing I remember is being licked, A neighbor's dog had gotten loose in the storm and found me, and the neighbor wasn't far behind. I'm happy to say that everything that followed was a blur, right up until I woke up, a few days later covered in skin grafts. It was 6 months before I managed to get out of the hospital bed. I think the official line is animal attack. Maybe that's all it was. I know the police have treated me a little oddly, but they never really interrogated me. Maybe I moved into a house that technically had one other occupant, and as long as it had been free to raid my trash and take my stuff, it never saw fit to doing anything about it. Thing is, that doesn't really explain why I came home the other day to find a cardboard box waiting for me. It looked normal enough from a distance. Up close, it was a different story. It was sopping wet, dripping God knows what all over my parents' doorstep. I hadn't ordered anything, but I knew it was for me, and sure enough it was. The only thing inside had been my shoe, the one I had last seen on my right foot, just before it disappeared into the toothy shadow. I've been trying to get this message out to someone, anyone, for weeks. I'm hoping, as I have every other time I have tried this, that this is the one that makes it out there. Although I'm starting to think that it might never happen. I don't know how to explain what's going on, because to be honest, I have no clue how I wound up here, or where here really is. I think I might be stuck in some sort of Groundhog Day situation. But I'll get to that in a bit. First, I think I need to tell you where I am. It's an old hotel in the middle of nowhere, located at the end of a dirt road. I've tried walking down the road, thinking that at some point I'd hit a busy street. But that doesn't happen. I tried this for a week, a full week, that consisted of me walking down the same dirt road for hours. I left the hotel in a few minutes after sunrise, and by the night the sun set, I was still walking down the same road. I stopped doing that after I finally accepted the fact that it wasn't going to work. I think that I need someone to come find me. There's nothing but trees, which extends as far as I can see. There's a mountain a few miles behind the hotel, but there are never any wild animals, despite the fact that it is very clearly located in the middle of a forest. The hotel is an old, rundown building with exposed brick on the outside and a broken neon sign that simply reads, Hotel. Except only the O glows anymore. That's how I know how long I've been here. When I first got here, all 5 letters lit up at nighttime, and with each passing week a random letter stops glowing. I don't know what's going to happen to me when they all turn off. I really don't think I want to find out. I think this might be the last shot of getting out of this place. There's a small parking lot in the front of the hotel, with 8 parking spaces but no vehicles. The parking lot itself is littered with dead leaves and random trash with riddled potholes. The door to the lobby creaks every time it's touched, and whenever I open or close it, I feel like it's going to disintegrate. Everything in here is so old. The furniture is made of faded, splintering wood, and all the bed sheets are faded and see-through from all the wear. The pillows are flat, and pretty much every single thing in this place creaks. Even the carpet is dirty and rough. There are only 2 rooms, but one of them is always locked. Every morning I wake up in the second room. In there's a bed with 2 pillows and a light blue bed sheets, a bedside table with a white lamp, a small bench by the door, a closet, a telephone that doesn't work, and a small bathroom with a toilet, a sink, and a shower. Any water that comes out of the faucet is lukewarm, and there's only 1 bar of soap in the bathroom that somehow never shrinks, no matter how much I use it, which, I suppose that's a pretty good thing. The day always goes as follows, without fail. I wake up and walk around the hotel, hoping to run into someone, anyone else, but I don't. The only other person in the hotel is the concierge, a woman in an old white pantsuit who never speaks to me and acts as if I'm not even here. Every once in a while, I try to catch her attention, but nothing has worked yet. I usually find something to eat at each mealtime, which appears on a random cart in my room. I've never seen anyone bring it in, and there's no kitchen here, so I don't know how. I don't know where it comes from. At first I was skeptical about eating the food, but so far it's been fine. It's edible and not poisonous, which is good enough for me. Recently I've spent my days trying to send out messages similar to this one. I found an old laptop in one of the drawers in my room. Somehow it never runs out of battery, but there's not much I can do with it, as there's no internet connection here. Maybe it's foolish of me to try this over and over, knowing that the chance of this actually working are pretty much non-existent. But I think I'd go crazy if I didn't at least hope for a miracle of sorts. At around 5 p.m., someone arrives at the hotel. It's always a different person, a different gender, different background, different ethnicity. I always see them right after they arrive, and they are looking for their room. They can never tell me where they are coming from, where they are going, or how they ended up here. They all say the same thing: I'm just passing through. And I always end up sleeping with them. I never remember who initiated it, or why, or how. I just see the person, we introduce ourselves, and the next thing I know, we're having sex in the hotel room, on the old bed sheets. The next morning, I wake up and they're gone. They always die. And even though I know this, I still roam around the hotel looking for them. The first time this happened, it was a man whose name was Tristan. The next morning, I found his head in the lobby on the front desk. Concierge ignored it. They all die differently. Sometimes it looks like they fell. Sometimes their deaths look impossible, like gunshot wounds even though there are no guns here, or stabbings but no whipping around. It makes me sad to say that I'm no longer fazed by their deaths. It's part of the routine now. I wake up and I immediately start looking for their bodies. I can't just not have sex with them. It always happens. It's like it's part of a cycle that I can't break, no matter how hard I try. Someone always arrives. I always end up running into them. We always have sex, and then they always die. If I walk a few miles into the woods, I can find the pile of bodies that belong to all of the previous guests. Sometimes I wonder if I'll eventually end up here too. The concierge lady is the one who drags the bodies out there. I've seen her do it, and so I know she's aware of the situation. This makes the fact that she always completely ignores me much more irritating. She clearly knows something, and I don't know why she doesn't acknowledge me. Maybe that's the part of her cycle. Maybe she can't talk to me in the same way that I can't leave this place or break out of this weird routine. I noticed when the sun started setting that the O in the sign outside was starting to flash on and off. Something tells me that I don't have much time left. I have many a day before the O turns off completely, and well, I don't know really. But I have this feeling in the pit of my stomach, the kind that you get when you just know something is off and something bad is going to happen. I left my room earlier around 5 p.m. to see who the next guest was going to be. I stood in the lobby staring at the door while the lady stood behind the counter, clicking away on her keyboard and staring at the black computer screen. But no one came. I waited until 5:15, but the door never opened, and no one ever came into the hotel. I'm really starting to freak out now. Not that I wasn't before, but the only thing scarier than being stuck in some weird routine is when that routine stops abruptly. At least before I knew what to expect. But now what? I headed back up to my room after no one showed up. As I walked down the hall, I noticed it. A third door? It was the same as the other two doors. Same peeling, light brown paint, same rusty doorknob, except it wasn't there before. There were only 2 rooms in this hotel, and now there were 3. I lifted my hand and knocked my knuckles against the door 3 times. No answer. I pressed my ear against the door, but there was only silence. I made my way back to the lobby, where the lady was still clicking away at nothing. I walked out of the hotel's door. I headed straight to the woods, towards the pile of dead bodies. I don't know what I expected to find, but there was nothing here. Nothing. The bodies were gone. They had vanished somehow. I wandered around the area a bit, squinting in the dim light of the fading sun, but I found nothing. I made my way back to the hotel and stopped in the middle of the parking lot. It was a lot darker than usual, and I looked up to see that the O was no longer lit up. I'm back in my room now, attempting this for what I think might be the last time. I hope this works. I need someone to see this. Maybe someone somewhere will know what's going on and how I can get out of this, whatever it is. I really hope this works. I don't think I'll make it until morning. Hey everybody, it's Curious Raven. This story was actually sent to me by a subscriber. He is an author and writes fictional, scary, creepy pastas. His name is Gregory Patrick Travers. No one is more frightened when the anger comes than me. Believe me when I tell you this. It is I who has the dissatisfaction of being the first one to know what is about to happen. It starts as a tickle in the throat, followed by the hoarse, demonic whispers inside my head. That's when I know the beast has returned and aims to claim more victims. And despite how I try to suppress it, I am powerless to stop it. Once the anger consumes me, I become something else. Whatever demon it is that makes use of my body, it does not allow me to see through its eyes or sift through its memories afterwards. When I wake up dazed in the morning, as I always did, the only resonance of my misdeeds was in short news stories stuffed in between late-night gas station holdups and high-speed car chases on the freeway. From what I can tell, my demon is a beast of nature and not a beast of Satan, as its victims, though brutally mauled and wounded, were that of an instinctive thirst for blood and flesh and not a narcissistic desire for mutilation. And if I was only but a hunter, then perhaps I was not completely evil. Perhaps my soul was not completely damned. That's what I told myself anyways. But on that cold, snowy Friday evening, as I sat at the wood in the warmth of the corner of the bar I frequented, watching the breaking news on their screens, I came to the realization that my soul was beyond saving. I recognized my handiwork on the news reports. Not only the way the victim was sprawled out like a rag doll, stomach and throat torn open, his insides on the outside, but I recognized the victim himself, despite how gray his cadaver had become, or how much rigor mortis had twisted his once handsome features. I knew the corpse on the bar screen was Scott. This worried me a great deal. Did the demon know that Scott beat me for the promotion at work? If so, that meant the beast attacks were no longer random. And if the demon was choosing the victims based on my subconscious animosity, it wouldn't be long before the people close to me started to suffer. "Can't you believe this?" said the young male bartender, looking up at the TV screen. "This is the third attack in 2 weeks. What kind of psycho could do that to someone? R.I.P. to them. Rip them to shreds like that. Especially during the holidays, right? Like, come on, dude, chillax. Have an eggnog, right?" "The news is saying it's a wolf on the loose," I mentioned, as my knife cut into the blue, rare slab of beef sitting and the pale pink blood on my plate. I forked the meat into my mouth, closing my eyes to savor the cool fibers of flesh between my teeth. "I heard people are even buying dog whistles," I added casually mid-chew. The kids scoffed at me. "What? The whole werewolf theory? Whatever, bud. I don't buy it for a second. It's a guy, a serial killer. Trust me, you'll see. When the cops find this guy, you'll see. It ain't no wolf. It's going to turn out to be some farmer, some bus driver, or some other old fart that no one suspected." The kid had a cockiness that I found repugnant, but as I swallowed the ball of meat in my mouth, I thought about what he had just said. Now that I had a connection to the victim, the police would surely want to question me, especially with the knowledge that we were up for the same promotion at work. I wondered, would they see I was hiding something? Would I give myself away? Or worse, would I turn into this thing? And if I did, would they kill me? Could they kill me? Despite knowing the horror my demon has caused, I cannot bring myself to end my life. Maybe the police could do it for me? I was so busy in my thoughts that I didn't even notice Stacy come into the bar and sit down at the stool next to mine. She had to smack me in the arm with a wrapped Christmas gift. "Hello," she said with a trailing giggle. "Is anybody home?" I came out of my trance, focusing on her pretty young face, encompassed in blonde curls, still harboring fugitive snowflakes, and had smuggled their way inside from the street. She shook her head like a dog coming in from the rain, and snowflakes flew from her hair down into the bar. Some landed on her arm. "Sorry about that," she laughed. Then she handed me the Christmas gift that she had held in her hands. "Here," she said, I got this for you. I took the gift from her and squeezed it. It felt like a shirt. What is it? I asked. It's a shirt, she replied. I tore the wrapping paper open and pulled out a black t-shirt with "Wish You Were Beer" printed on it in big, bold lettering. I couldn't help but chuckle. It's great, I said, draping the shirt over my wool sweater to model it for Stacy and less so the bartender. I'll wear it everywhere. She gave me a soft tap on the back. I thought you would like it. I folded the shirt neatly and placed it on the bar beside my cutlery. Geez, blue rare steak again? She said colorfully, her face twisted as she looked at the pool of blood on the plate. Hey, the man likes his steak, said the bartender, flashing Stacy a smile. What's up, Stacy? Are you my evening sauce slinger? Sure am, she answered. The kid looked at his watch. You're early, bud. I just want to drop off a present to my favorite regular, she said. She smiled at me and winked. I could have sat there gazing into her beautiful green eyes until the end of time. Stacy brought upon calm in which I could not find nowhere else. Maybe that's why I chose to have dinner there 4 days a week. It certainly wasn't the food. When Stacy was around, the anger was not. There was no tingle in the throat. There were no whispering voices. My demons settled like dust on an old bookshelf. Stacy, whether she knew it or not, was my angel. I wondered if perhaps there might come a day when I could have her for myself. Maybe if she was mine and around me all the time, I would be rid of this horrible curse once and for all. Without warning, I was ripped from my fantasy by a sudden shrill screech that sliced through my skull like a chainsaw. The deafening ring vibrated inside my head to the point I thought my brain might explode from the pressure. I clenched my jaw and slammed my fist down on the bar. Both Stacy and the bartender jerked back as my plate and cutlery shook. Are you okay? Asked Stacy, frightened. They didn't hear it. How? Why? My head was spinning from pain. I managed to turn my head and scan the scattered patronage of 12 or so customers. I saw where the sound was coming from, just as the unbearable screeching came to a dead stop, and a soothing wave of relief rushed over me. It was a girl with her friend at the table in the corner, blowing on a dog whistle. Thankfully for all of us, she grew tired of it and placed the whistle back in her purse. If there was a wolf out there killing people, he won't be messing with me. I heard the girl laugh, though by all accounts I shouldn't have been able to hear what she was saying. She was all the way in the back, much too far for a human ear to pick up. Just as clearly as they were sitting at the stools next to mine, I heard the girl's heavier friend say, You're so paranoid. I'm fine, I answered Stacy finally. I got up from my stool and started for the jukebox. I'm going to play a song. Stacy called out to me, Ooh, play some Christmas carols. The snow is so pretty outside under the full moon. But I barely heard her. My heart was racing, pounding my ears like a drum. Panic struck me like a steamroller. Things were starting to change. The demon chose to attack my enemy from work. Now I'm gaining its extraordinary hearing capabilities. Even 10 feet away from Stacy and the bartender, I could hear them whispering about me. I flipped through the jukebox track menu, pretending to be focused on that while I listened to what they were saying behind my back. You see the way he freaked out like that? Said the bartender with a chuckle. What a freak. Yeah, weird, Stacy replied. She sounded genuinely concerned. Maybe she really did like me, I thought. So what's the deal with this present? Asked the bartender, spewing the cockiness I so loathed. You got a crush on that clown or something? Ew, no, she said right away. I felt the stab of her recoil in my gut. I just feel bad for the guy, she continued. I mean, it's 3 days until Christmas and he's still here every day eating steak by himself. He's obviously got nobody. Well, as long as you're not going to take the charity case home or anything like that, you make me jealous, babe. That's sweet, she sighed. You coming over tonight? He asked her. As soon as I get off, she answered lustfully. Oh, you'll be getting off all right. The bartender swooned. Suddenly I felt a familiar tingle in my throat. How foolish I was to think that Stacy saw me as anything but a customer, anything but a tip. In her mind, I was just a pathetic, lonely guy with nowhere to go for the holidays. I pressed play on the jukebox, and Frank Sinatra's "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas" began to flood out the speakers above, wired along the rafters. But I couldn't hear the music. I couldn't hear anything at all. The whispers, hoarse demonic whispers in the back of my mind, drowned out the string orchestra and Frank's smooth baritone voice. "He's laughing at you," the voice whispered mockingly. "They're both laughing at you." I was starting to sweat. The voice became louder and more violent. The tingle in my throat had evolved into a pulsing ache. It was no use fighting it. The anger was returning. Soon I would lose all control. Soon the demon would be free, and no one would be leaving this bar. The end. Case number 172. Herbert Redford, Fayette Township, Iowa, August 29th, 2020. 4:14 p.m. The patient is like all the others. We don't understand what is happening. It is insanity. I'd normally be documenting this according to protocol, but fuck protocol. An entire county doesn't suddenly start dying all at once. I was scared to even come, but they assured me it wasn't a plague or a virus. Though the extremely secretive lockdown was in full force, as I arrived in the military caravan, I shouldn't be using official catalogs to note my thoughts like this. But something clicked when I met Herbert today for the first time. His hair was falling out, and he was experiencing shaking and agonizing pain. I feel I may be in danger, and these reports might serve as some kind of record. Mr. Herbert Redford Jr. appears to be showing early signs of extreme radiation poisoning. I decided to move him out of the hospital to make room for patients who have a higher chance of survival. But nobody has mentioned radiation to me yet. It gives me chills as we are right near the Duane Arnold Nuclear Energy Center. What the fuck happened there? This was just one example of the records she had sent me from Iowa. I will list a few more for posterity, just so you might get some sense of direness of what is currently unfolding. Case number 2076. Jamie L. Heathrow, Fayette Township, Iowa, August 29th, 2020, 5:38 p.m. Patient exhibits no likelihood of recovery. Genetic damage is certainly extensive. She's frightened, but I have a lot to do, and so I told her I would come visit her when I'm able. She has a few days to live at best, but within a few hours, she will be in pain that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I never believed in euthanism. I thought life should always be given a chance. We were given a brief seminar on radiation poisoning, a few hours ago to prepare us for what to expect in most of the patients. Oh my fucking God. Case number 30815. Donald Thomason, Fayette Township, Iowa, August 29th, 2020. 8:41 p.m. The trucks never seem to end. I know I'm not the only one who has stopped cataloging the patients according to our requirements. There are just too many. The power plant must have melted down. I just know it. But they say it has not. They showed us a Geiger counter to prove that it was safe. But how can I know if they are even trustworthy? I just used this case log to vent before venturing back out into the complete shitstorm that is unfolding around me. Fuck this. I want to get the hell out of here so badly. Fuck 2020. Case number 33726. William Davis, Fayetteville Township, Iowa, August 29th, 2020, 9:34 p.m. Patient exhibited convulsions for hours and moments ago slipped into a coma. I've had him transferred to the exterior ward to make room for more patients. He will certainly be dead within 10 hours or so. Any additional aid would be better served on other patients. Many of my colleagues left a couple hours ago. They think there was a meltdown at the nuclear power station. I can understand their fear, but these people need our help. Having to choose to let a person die because we don't have enough manpower is a decision I never thought I'd have to make. I won't lie. I want to run, but if it really is a meltdown, I'm dead already anyways. Case number 45182, Sam Wilson, Fayette Township, Iowa, August 29th, 2020, 10:08 p.m. Patient is starting to show the first signs of poisoning. It seems to manifest in some patients faster than others. But within the last few hours, almost everyone in the county seems to be showing up. She asked me if she was going to die. I told her yes. She started to cry. I will be honest. I'm crying too. I was going to leave, but she's already dying. How much time do I have? The best I can do is try to help whoever I can. We're all in this together now. Case number 45182, Franklin Peterson, Fayette Township, Iowa, August 29th, 2020, 11:17 p.m. I don't even bother with the formalities anymore. He was one of the hundreds of people I have just frankly told are going to die in the next day or two. I told Franklin rather frankly. Jesus. I was sent these logs by an old friend and colleague back in the States less than a day ago. They might provide some insight into what to expect. They were highly classified transcripts in theory, but she said that the secret wasn't going to remain so much longer. The scale of the incident was just too great. She believed getting the word out was more important than secrecy or her career, especially if there had been a meltdown at the power station. These kinds of tragedies happen, and I hadn't immediately thought too much of it, beyond hoping my friend was alright. After all, we had our Chernobyl here, and Japan had their Fukushima. If there was radiation belching from the plant, she would certainly be well within harm's way, and I worried for her. That was just half a day ago now, and I had not been prepared for what I learned just a few hours later, when Putin himself called everyone in the department to an impromptu meeting to discuss an international incident. I had met with him a few times, and he was always confident, but I could see that he had a strange look in his eyes this time. I'll admit I was never a fan of his. I know he is a petty tyrant. He poisoned political rivals and carried a macho man stereotype as part of his masquerade. But I don't think I had ever seen the look I now saw in him. The confidence was gone. He was shaken. He was clearly frightened of something. I'm terrified to admit it, but my friend in Iowa was both right and wrong. This information does need to be shared, hence why I'm now telling you all of this so earnestly. But it wasn't a meltdown at a power station. In the last 2 hours, I think we have pieced together what is going on. Maybe by the time you have read this, you will have already seen this in the news. But in hopes that you are someone who may still able to benefit from this knowledge, I have decided to share it as well. I will probably be dragged into a back alley and shot for doing it, but honestly, that may be a blessing in disguise for me at this point. I'm a director at Rosteneger. For you Westerners, this is a Russian nuclear regulatory agency, and I have access to some of the most secretive information relating to nuclear power and nuclear weapons in the country. I just got out of a meeting with colleagues, and I am absolutely in shock. The reports from the United States were horrifying, as were similar ones from India, China, France, etc. But it wasn't until General Gerasimov told us about the observations they had made over the last day that the gravity of the situation really sank in for me. To be fair, I still don't know for sure what is happening, so treat this as a speculation. It is, but we have a few things I think we can safely call facts at this point. Over the last 2 days and half days, the staff and nearby populations surrounding almost every nuclear power plant and missile site on the planet have suddenly exhibited symptoms of mass radiation poisoning. The fact that they have managed to keep this under wraps worldwide is a testament to humanity's willingness to cow to authority. Because many people know about this now, I suspect everyone will know within the next day or so. I think the fact that you and I are already dead is the only reason nobody has bothered to leak this yet. I know it is silly. I don't have any reason to do this, but I feel like it is a point of respect to give you the chance to know what is about to happen to you. If you do not want to know, I would stop reading now. Over the last 5 days, brief flashes have occurred over nearly every major military and nuclear installation around the world. Casualties are expected to be nearly 100% for those in the affected areas. We were not given any information about what the possible causes were, but radiation exposure was at far beyond lethal levels. The general went on to give us the real news, though. Over the last 24 hours or so, flashes have occurred over almost every city on the planet. According to our best experts, we have all been exposed. The first flash lasted exactly 0.1 seconds here in Moscow and inundated the city with an unthinkably vast amount of gamma ray radiation. And apparently, there have been 5 in the last 4 hours. Everyone in the room would almost certainly be dead within the next few days. I'm not an idiot. I'm a doctor in both medicine and in particle physics. I taught at Lomonosov as a professor. I know what gamma ray bursts are. I know what radiation poisoning does to a body. If you're living in a major or even minor urban area, you're likely already dead. Within the next 72 to 130 hours or so, you will begin to develop what will start as mild symptoms, but will eventually develop into far, far, far more severe ones. You will likely start to hear about this in the media soon, as the sheer scale of the initial casualties at the nuclear sites is too much to keep hidden for long. So I don't think I am doing any treason by telling you all of this now. If you live in the countryside, you may be okay for now, but I really don't know. The sheer scale of radiation burst is unfathomable. Stay away from urban areas. I don't have much hope for you, but at least you may be spared the agonizing death that awaits most of us. I cornered the general after the meeting and quite literally strong-armed him into telling me what was actually happening here. He admitted he had no idea, but that he planned to just return home and spend the last few days with his family. That was when I realized I was fucked. Completely and utterly fucked. Here was a great and commanding Russian officer beginning to sob, pinned against a wall by me, of all people, but he had nothing to say to me. He was so completely convinced of his own hopeless situation. After having spent nearly an hour in a room with some of the best radiologists in Russia, that he didn't even care anymore. Sometimes it is odd how fear of death puts us all on an equal level, for no amount of wealth or power grants any privilege in death. I let him go. He didn't seem to have much will to resist anyways. I realized he had been doing his best to keep calm, to keep a calm demeanor when he had explained to us all that we were certainly all going to die soon. And he was just a person like me, looking for answers to incalculable questions, wondering how and why we were dealt the cards we were. I did some research about an hour ago. I stole his security clearance fob from him while he was pinned against the wall. I'm now in his office, reviewing the materials he had access to. It seems we have known about them for some time. Nobody knows how many stars they have deemed, but almost every year another one disappears. It is unlikely they were consumed or died. I read the reports and it wouldn't make any sense. I don't know how a star goes dark. Maybe it was Dyson's sphere, or maybe a light of the supernova just hasn't reached us yet, though even that would seem inexplicable. What I do know, though, is that I saw them just 40 minutes ago while looking out the window of his office, a small and strange thing moving through the air at odd angles and changing directions in an instant. I heard the loud noise of fighters as they buzzed to intercept it, which is what caused me to look out the window to begin with. But it whizzed around, not seeming to have any particular destination, changing momentum in bizarre 90-degree angles in fractions of a second, and then it emitted a flash. It wasn't super bright, but I knew what it was. You barely have even noticed it if you didn't know what you were looking at. If I had any hope of survival at all, it was completely gone at that point. I sit here at the General's computer and write this to you, because you deserve to know. This is not war. A war would imply fighting, resistance, some vague hope of victory. We are already dead. This is extermination. I don't know what they are, or why they decided that we needed to die, but within the next few days almost all of us will. As the gamma radiation exposure tears us apart, I recommend you put your last day or so into doing things you never got around to. This is why I felt the need to share this with you. I can't stop what is happening. All we can do is cherish the short time we have left. Live like you never lived before. Love like you never loved before. You have just a few more days, maybe less. Make them count. November 3rd, 2011 is when my mom went crazy. My parents were married for 21 years. My mom has always had her demons, but for a long time she had at least tried. Sometime in 2006 or 2007, after I went to college, she went off her meds for depression for the 1000th time. This time was different. I didn't realize what mania looked like at the time. I was only 18, but years later I realized she had an adult onset of bipolar disorder. It was unnerving. It was a last straw for my dad, and he left. The divorce was finalized in 2008. My mom was never the same. The combination of the borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder, both diagnosed. meant watching her go up and down on a haunting roller coaster of destruction, meant watching the small part of her that was a mother fade away. My dad left her the house, the one we had lived in all my life. It's a beautiful home, cozy, and on the corner. There's a big bay window and natural light. It always felt like home until the divorce. I hated being in the house after my dad left. Her behavior became more erratic, and the lows became so much low, and the house began to change. It was dark and still, and you couldn't wait to leave. I've always chalked it up to my perception as a young adult weathering a divorce and my mom's downward spiral. But now, I don't know. It got worse and worse over time, and then I got the phone call on November 13th, 2011. I was living in another city. The call was from my father telling me a neighbor noticed he hadn't seen my dog in the bay window for several days and decided to use a spare key my mother had given him. The dog was dead in the bathroom, and my mother was in bed, weak and frail. She had laid in the bed for so long her leg muscles had atrophied. The dog, I've never been able to get answers on, but my sister once let it slip that there was blood. The cleaners my aunt hired to clean the house found my cat 3 days into the job, crushed to death between the ottoman and the chair in the back room. She spent the next few years in a tetanic state, first in the mental hospital, and then she was transferred to a nursing home. In the meantime, I was the one to clean up the house. She was a shopaholic hoarder, and mental illness had only amplified it. The first time I came back home, it felt dark and still, but it was empty. It didn't have the panic pressure that I've felt with my mother there. I started cleaning and sorted and cleaned, and more sorting and cleaning. The more I did this, the lighter and brighter it became, until it felt like home again. Not really, but kind of. There was always a little bit of stillness there, but I attribute it, and perhaps I still do, to my subconscious awareness of what had happened there. One thing I noticed about the house was that the lightness could become dark in the blink of an eye, and everything was gradual, if that makes sense. You never noticed things until you were consumed by the still darkness. It was like a cloak coming over the place in one steady sweep. It was odd, but how can you explain it? I had a boyfriend. Our relationship wasn't exactly healthy to begin with, but I still say that he noticed the same things I did with the house. There was 3 specific incidents with that house. The first one was one day. It was me, him, and one of his friends sitting in the middle room when he heard the distinct sound of the front door opening. They went to go check, but it was closed, with no sign of being opened. The thing about the door is that it has like the rest of our house. The door had become difficult to open and close. In order to open it, you had to put your shoulder into it, but in order to close it, you had to thrust your body weight against it several times before it would shut. We heard it open, but we never heard it shut. That was impossible. 3 people heard the exact same thing. The second incident was my ex and I were sitting in the middle of the room once again. We were in the office chairs at our desk talking about something when we heard several creaks overhead and a sudden smash directly over my head in the attic. It was as if someone took several steps until they were overhead and had either a plate or glass, that very specific glass shattering sound, and threw it with great force. The sound was so incredibly clear. My ex and I locked eyes with each other, and he whispered, "There's someone in the attic." I was gone. I bolted out to the garage and backed my car out and parked in the driveway. My ex came out to meet me and convinced me to stay, where I was in the car as he called his best friend, the same one who heard the front door open but not open, and asked him to come with his gun so they could search the attic. His best friend arrived in less than 2 minutes with his weapon. They both went inside the house and searched the place from top to bottom as I sat in the driveway. The way this house was set up was it was corner lot. The side gate faced the street, and there was a bay window that wrapped around the house and stretched almost to the front door. We still had the blinds up. This meant that from my vantage point, I could see inside half of the house, and if anyone exited through the only 2 exits in the home. the front door, and the side gate. I could even see the back fence from where I was. I would see them. I could even see the roof. It was not a large home. I would be able to see if anyone was making an escape. As I waited for the boys to return, I half expected to see a homeless man scramble out of the house. It was the only thing that could explain the sound of something being thrown right above my head. The boys completed the search of the home. Nothing and no one was to be found. I asked if they had checked the attic thoroughly. They said. I believed them. The thing about the attic of the house is that it wasn't a true attic. The rafters were set up in such a way that a person could not walk around freely up there. If they did, they would fall through the ceiling. There was a light switch up there, and the boys had examined every square inch of the attic. There was no sign of life to be found. No glass, nothing. It would be easy to write it off as a strange sound the old house had made, if it wasn't for one thing my boyfriend was insistent on: the footsteps he had heard leading up to the crash. He was adamant he had heard the footsteps above him as they walked to the spot right above me. He had heard the wood slightly creak as if something had lifted its arms up to throw something with force. I wear hearing aids, so I miss out on a lot of sounds. But I had heard creaking before the smash, and I knew by then when my boyfriend was being sincere. I believe him even to this day, and as to hearing those footsteps. Third incident. We were in the house for 2 or 3 years. I split my time between there and down south for college. My boyfriend stayed behind in the house. He would mention that there were times he just knew he wasn't alone, but no other specific incidents took place. The house began to get darker. Our fights grew worse and more violent. Something happened to my mind. It all happened gradually until it was horrible. A point of no return. To this day, the depression I felt there is like nothing I have ever experienced before. It changed me. After one particularly savage fight, I went for a drive and came back. I was alone. He was not there. I entered through the back door and was greeted by a wall of darkness. It was still, cold, dark, even though all the lights were on. You could barely breathe. I snapped. I yelled at the darkness in the kitchen for no particular reason. Get the fuck out. Go away. I see you. Go. I am so sick of you. It retreated. I swear to you on my son, I visibly saw the darkness shift backwards. I screamed at it more, and it retreated some more. There was light again. The house was light and beautiful again. My memory stops there. In the kitchen, screaming at darkness. Then I wake up in bed, fully clothed, on top of the sheets. The house is dark again. The stillness is there again. But when I walk into the kitchen, it is light and bright. Oddly enough, there was the first time I considered the possibility that there might be something more to the house. That there might be something otherworldly there. But what? Not too long after the incident in the kitchen, I left the house, and it was put up for sale. I have been through many tough and trying times since then, but I have never experienced the darkness, the sluggishness, the stillness, the pressure, the panic, the hopelessness, the bleakness, and the agony that home since then. My gut tells me there is something there. My rationalism is willing to concede that it could all be subconsciously rooted in the pain associated with the home's history, but I feel that there truly is or was something dark and dangerous within the home. And I only wonder if it was there when my mother moved in with my father, or if she created it with her downward spiral. I had a reoccurring dream while in that house. I would walk into the middle room and see something that resembled a cross between the creature from Alien and Predator, and it would lock eyes with me, and I would hear it in my mind. Widow Sullivan, and the dream would end. There is no one in my family with the name Sullivan, and I am unsure if it's connected. Probably not, but I never had the dream again after leaving the home.
Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross